We are taught that ancient artists painted the Lascaux caves by the light of blazing wooden torches. This is the classic image we have inherited from old stories and assume to be historical truth. The idea feels perfectly intuitive to us today because a simple wood fire was their oldest tool. We naturally assume they simply picked up burning branches from the campfire and walked into the dark. But taking a roaring wood torch deep inside a cave creates a massive and immediate physical problem. Wood fires burn very dirty and consume huge amounts of oxygen rapidly in an enclosed, tight space. At 130 meters deep, the cave system lacks any natural ventilation or airflow. A burning wooden branch produces thick clouds of blinding, choking black smoke almost immediately upon lighting it. The carbon monoxide buildup would quickly render the artists unconscious in those deep, narrow stone corridors. Furthermore, the heavy wood suit would completely coat and ruin the pristine limestone walls they were painting. They absolutely did not use blazing wooden branches to paint the deep galleries of Lascaux or Chauvet caves. To work in the abyss, these early humans engineered a completely different, highly specialized form of technology. Deep inside the painted Lascaux caves, excavations revealed over 100 of these shallow stone bowls. These small artifacts were scattered along the floor, left exactly where the ancient artists originally dropped them. They were not simple palettes for mixing red or yellow ochre paint, as many experts first assumed. Chemical analysis of the dark, crusted residue inside the stone bowls revealed a completely different, crucial purpose. The residue contained highly concentrated traces of animal fat, specifically pure tallow from ancient reindeer and cattle. These flat, carefully carved limestone rocks were actually sophisticated, self-contained grease lamps built specifically for total darkness. Their engineering was remarkably simple, yet incredibly effective for deep subterranean navigation and extended, meticulous artistic work. An artist would take a solid chunk of hard animal fat and press it firmly into the stone. They then needed a basic wick to draw up the liquid grease and sustain an even, continuous flame. Small pieces of dried juniper twigs or tightly woven moss were laid directly beside the solid fat chunk. When ignited, the initial heat slowly melted the solid chunk into a small, contained pool of liquid fuel. The moss wick absorbed this liquid tallow, creating a remarkably stable, brightly burning, and easily managed flame. Unlike raw wood, pure rendered animal fat burns incredibly cleanly, producing almost zero airborne soot or choking smoke. This clean combustion meant the ancient artists could breathe safely for hours in tight, entirely unventilated stone spaces. It also guaranteed their delicate, masterful animal paintings remained completely free from ruinous layers of thick black ash. One of the most famous examples is a beautiful rose limestone lamp discovered deep inside the Lascaux caves. It was carefully carved with a smooth, spoon-like bowl and a perfectly balanced, ergonomic projecting stone handle. This elegant tool demonstrates that safely lighting the cave was an intentional, carefully planned feat of prehistoric engineering. Reconstructions of these ancient fat lamps have been carefully tested to measure exactly how well they actually worked. A single small handful of rendered animal tallow provides a steady, reliable light for over 3 unbroken hours. The flame is surprisingly warm and bright, casting a gentle glow that clearly illuminates the rough rock face. This incredibly steady light was the exact tool necessary to execute complex, multi-layered animal murals. Without the constant, terrifying panic of a dying torch, an artist could focus entirely on precise line work. Furthermore, they could simply set the flat stone lamp down securely upon a natural rock shelf. This freed both hands entirely, allowing them to effectively blow crushed pigment through hollow bone tubes. But did these ancient artists completely abandon traditional wood fires inside the deep cave systems? Not exactly. Excavators have found distinct scatters of wood charcoal, but strictly in the wider, highly ventilated entrance chambers. Roaring wood fires were perfectly safe, and heavily utilized near the cave mouth, where fresh air circulated. It was only when they passed the twilight zone and descended into the abyss that they switched. What remains a mystery is exactly how they navigated the perilous physical journey down into those depths. A small, fat lamp illuminates only a few feet ahead, leaving deep chasms completely hidden in gloom. Climbing down 100 jagged meters with only a tiny, fragile flame requires immense physical courage. Today, modern spelunkers use incredibly powerful electric headlamps to survive these exact same treacherous limestone cave systems. Yet the fundamental engineering principle of a contained liquid fuel source, slowly feeding a wick, survives everywhere. Every time you light a simple wax candle during a power outage, you utilize their exact technology. These artists engineered light from animal fat. What everyday modern tool might future archaeologists completely misunderstand?